Cool. So, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us. Still got people joining. That's great. Right, keep an eye on it, see how many more people are joining us, and we'll get started now. So thank you all for joining us this evening on the Animal Rebellion stream of Solidarity. We're here with the Animal Justice Project to discuss their most recent campaign, Exposed, which is the cost of a pandemic, talking about zoonotic diseases and the current situation within our food systems, and touching on government bailouts for these industries as well. I'd like to start this session this evening with a few breaths, a chance for us to gather our thoughts and be grounded. So you may want to close your eyes and ground your feet if you feel comfortable doing so. And when we're done, I will gently bring us back in. And when everyone's ready to come back in. Yeah, so I would like to start by thanking our panelists for joining us and for everyone joining us in the audience and for, all the hard work and passion everyone brings into what they do, especially during these times. So we're going to start off with a brief introduction from each panelist. Just starting with your name and where you're from, how you're feeling in this space, and also what brought you to be active in the roles you have within the organizations. Kerry, would you like to start us off?
Sure, thank you, Marina. Welcome everyone, thank you for coming this evening. My name is Kerry. I am from London originally, but I live in France. And I have been with Animal Rebellion since the beginning, when we started last July. And I'm the political and research lead. And what brought me to that role was simply, my role does, it involves outreach, especially to farmers, and that's something I'm really passionate about, building bridges between different communities. Would you like me to pass it to someone, Marina?
Yes, please.
Oh, good for Peter.
Thanks very much, Kerry, and thanks to Animal Rebellion for putting this together. So my name's Peter, and I'm the social media coordinator for Animal Justice Project. I've been involved with Animal Justice Project for almost 3 months now, so I'm quite new to the team, but really enjoying it. And the role that I play is coordinating a lot of the online actions that we're doing. We're a campaigns-led organization, and so for me, especially during this time, it's been about maximizing the impact we have on social media and through these events that we do. Yeah, so I'll pass on to Ayrton.
Hello, so I'm Ayrton. I'm the senior campaigner at Animal Justice Project. So I've been with the organisation for a couple of years now. So if you follow our group, any of the campaigns, including undercover investigations that come out of the group, especially to do with the farm animals, are usually managed by me. Obviously, everyone does have their input, but as a campaigner, I tend to manage them. So a bit about myself. So I ended up in this role simply because I've always wanted to help animals, and I was always been a little bit confused of what the best way to help as many animals as possible. So I did go to university, so I got a degree in zoology. So my aim was to go down the conservation route because I wanted to save the species as a whole. That was my first thought, to go down the species route. But then kind of as you go through that degree, you find out a lot of conservation is based off, killing other species to save a single species. So then that conflicted a lot with my personal ethics. And then it made me realise kind of how important the actual individual animal was to me. So I decided to kind of go down the animal rights route, and luckily, managed to be with Animal Justice Project for a couple of years now. And yeah, we have quite a few rescued animals ourselves at home. So yeah, it's quite nice kind of working in animal rights all the time, being surrounded by rescue animals, and yeah, going to like sanctuaries and things. So yeah, that's me. I'll pass to Stephanie.
Hi, so I'm Stephanie, and I just wanted to thank Animal Justice Project for being here. I'm really looking forward to this discussion with you both. Yeah, so I'm currently media and messaging coordinator at Animal Rebellion, and how I got into this role, I don't even really know. So I used to be a high school music and history teacher and wanted to move to the UK to travel and do things. I was involved in animal justice, but I didn't think I could really offer anything. I was like, oh, I can just do some street activism, do some of this, but I didn't really know where else to go. And I got involved in the October Rebellion. And from there, it was just like, yeah, how do I continue teaching the youth of tomorrow when there could be no tomorrow with the climate breakdown and what's happening with animals? It was just enough. So then I started kind of getting more involved, and they're like, hey, do you want to do media messaging? I'm like, sure. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm happy to learn and figure it out. So that's how I got here. I'll pass it back to Marina.
Thank you, and thank you so much for such lovely introductions. Yeah, my name is Marina. I am with Animal Rebellion, and I coordinate the Connecting Community Circle. So a lot of what I do is, like reaching out to different groups, so community groups, so people who sort of relate to each other, not by geographical location, more by their sense of community, as well as working with other movements and organizations within the animal justice movement, as well as the climate movement. And yeah, I came to this role with, I felt a real sense of urgency around what's going on in the global south and what's going on with our climate, and this real connection with how our food systems are impacted. And as well, when we talk about animal justice, like what that means in all of the systems and all forms of oppression. And so I came on board full-time about 6 months ago now. So that's a bit about me. And I think we've still got a few people coming in. I'd like to, if that's okay, pass it over to Animal Justice Project to introduce Animal Justice Project and your current campaign, Exposed. So if you guys would like to take it away.
So I'll take that one. So talking about Animal Justice Project in general to begin with, as Peter said, we're a campaigns-led organisation. So within the campaigns themselves, we do undercover investigations. So last year, we were lucky enough to carry out 3 undercover investigations. So we covered higher welfare, RSPCA assured chicken farming, as in meat chickens. We did an undercover investigation at the largest duck supplier in the UK, which was Gressingham Ducks. And then we did another investigation at Pastures Poultry. So they're a very small run family farm. So they raise the birds and they kill them on site. So this is kind of, the top of the top in terms of farming. It includes, all of the buzzwords that people like to talk about. So as an organisation, we like to go for the farms and the industries that are supposed to have, the highest welfare, because we're a completely abolitionist organisation. So we'll never promote, higher welfare. We'll never promote the better chicken commitment, for example, because like talking about the better chicken commitment, they actually promote the standards that we exposed during our investigation. And there's, certain groups are still out there promoting those, even though we've done an undercover investigation inside those very farms and just showed that they're exactly the same. So that's what we tend to do with the farm animal side of things. And then for those that follow us, you'll already know that we do vivisection work as well. So for our vivisection campaigns, we tend to heavily focus on British universities, because half of all experiments in the UK take place at universities. the number of animals being experimented on are typically not changing that much. So a university we recently exposed is University of Nottingham, so they actually increased the number of animals by a quarter in just 1 year. So actually a lot of universities are increasing the number of experiments despite promoting the reduction as a whole, which is simply false, and it's just, more industry propaganda. So we try and be as strategic as possible. We go for the high welfare labels, we go for the key companies, these free range, as well as the vivisection. And then with the vivisection, we try to be kind of as public facing as possible. So we always bring the media into everything that we do, including the farm investigations as well. So we tend to launch investigations and campaigns with huge news stories as well to hopefully reach, tens of thousands of people rather than a few thousand possibly on social media. The new campaign is called Expose, which is all about, the current pandemic. So what we found was, looking into the pandemic, we wanted to call it Exposed because it's exposed two things. We wanted to split the campaign in half. So it's exposed the bailouts that are funding the animal exploitation industries, and obviously they wouldn't be able to carry on without these, taxpayers' money. And then the other side of it is that the animals are ultimately paying yet again. So when the supply chains have issues, again, it's the animals that suffer, because obviously I'm sure you've all seen there's many news stories around of how, they're getting rid of thousands of egg-laying hens because there's no supply. The dairy industry threatened to kill 80,000 cows because places like Starbucks and Costa closed. So again, it's, the farmers want to act like they're the ones that are suffering, but, the animals actually suffer greatly because they're paid with their lives. That's the campaign overall. So I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you. Yeah. Take a few breaths, I think, just to think about that. Carrie or Stephanie, would you like to introduce sort of Animal Rebellion, sort of an introduction of our demands and sort of the aims of the organization, and I guess sort of around the theory of change, and sort of what we're up to, I guess, during this time as well. As a lot of, what's just been highlighted is obviously what we are also focusing our energies on as well.
Okay, thanks, Marina. So as I said before, Animal Rebellion it's a relatively new group. We were created last July when some members of Extinction Rebellion met with 18 animal justice organisations, including Animal Justice Projects, our friends here. We're a mass movement, and we use civil disobedience, civil resistance to bring about a transition to a just and sustainable food system. Now, the reason why we do this is because we want to avert the effects of climate breakdown as well as ensure the justice for animals. The best way we talk about it in Animal Rebellion is that we cannot end the climate emergency without addressing the animal emergency. When you think about all the problems that animal agriculture causes, like deforestation, biodiversity loss, air, water pollution, to just name a few, animal agriculture is the root cause of the climate and ecological emergency. And at our core, our main demand, what we demand is system change. So we want to target the structures of power, the government, that props up animal agriculture and destroys our planet. And you might have seen some of our actions. For example, during the October Rebellion, we occupied Smithfield's meat market just to show a vision of what a plant-based future could look like. And then we took our protests to DEFRA, to the heart of the government, to demand change in our food system. And we generated a lot of press. It was national and international, and it led to many groups springing up all around the world. And recently, we've been going back to DEFRA We did an action this week that Marina here was involved in, and we've been doing a lot of government live streams, primarily against the government bailouts of the animal agriculture sector. Now, we're based on a theory of change, and our theory of change comes from a book by Edith Chenoweth, Why Civil Resistance Works, and they've seen that non-violent campaigns are twice as likely to work as violent campaigns. And although the exact dynamics depend on many different factors, it's shown that if you get 3.5% of the population to actively participate in protest, you can have almost a guarantee of serious political change. And that's what we want to do. We want to mass mobilize people to demand system change and to address the climate emergency. And we also work within an ecology of social movements. So we have different cycles, the ebb and flow of of what we do. We can be in one phase of organising, of preparation, of going into rebellion and then regrouping. And we're taking the opportunity now during the coronavirus crisis to really regroup and focus ourselves on organising for the next round of rebellion, and we hope that as many people as you can will join us.
Thank you, Kerry. That's great. Yeah, so a little bit about us, a little bit about our panelists. Thank you so much. So we have some questions that we'd love to ask to each panelist. And the first question that we have here is to open up the discussion. And the question is, so how has the pandemic, so the coronavirus pandemic, exposed the pre-existing problems like within the current food systems? So yeah, I'm not sure who wants to sort of take that question first and really unpack that one. Kerry, you're already unmuted, or we could go to Stephanie, or we could go to Peter, Ayrton.
One of the gentlemen, maybe.
Peter, you want to go?
Yeah, I'm happy to go. Yeah. So this is a question that's the whole campaign that we're doing at the moment. It's a big part of that. I guess, yeah, the clue is in the name with that one. Is it's about exposing that there are a lot of problems that are already there, and we think that the pandemic basically has just brought those to light. And a lot of these problems have already been there, and yeah, it's just now that more people are becoming aware of it, or at least now is an opportunity for people to become aware of it. And these are there's a range of things. There's the zoonotic diseases that are linked to the exploitation of animals. And what we do, I think there's over 200 zoonotic diseases are recognized by the World Health Organization as being highly infectious. And yeah, a lot of these basically are linked to the fact that we exploit and kill animals in the way that we do. And basically, yeah, the campaign that we're doing is looking into that and going, this is the current situation, that there is this exploitation happening and it doesn't actually have to happen anymore. And also, like, the other side of that is also the fact that we're bailing out industries at the moment. Like we're hearing that is it 10 million at the moment that's gone to the fishing industry here in the UK. And that's just one example of the amount of money that that taxpayers are paying towards this exploitation. But what this also is an opportunity to highlight is the fact that, like, over a long time we've been already bailing out these industries in other ways and propping up the whole system. It's a broken system, and I think that's something that is highlighted here is that this system is largely propped up by, well, everyone here. And I think that's something to express and to get out there more to people, and to use this as an opportunity to do that. Maybe Ayrton could add a bit more about the the campaign itself, potentially. If I've probably missed a few things there, but yeah.
I mean, I think you covered quite a lot there already. In terms of the existing problems, as I said with the campaign, we wanted to really split it into two different sections. So the bailouts especially, obviously they are very public, the bailouts. Well, once people get to know about them, they are then into the news once we finally find out about them. So as Peter mentioned, 10 million has gone to the fishing industry. The shellfish industry are asking for bailouts. They've been asking for bailouts for about 3 months now. The dairy industry, with their new campaign, they've been given £500,000 plus at least £10,000 per farmer. So I think, creating campaigns currently to help share this information in a more public friendly way is absolutely vital right now. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the other side of things is, the animals do pay the ultimate price. As I mentioned already, 80,000 dairy cows were potentially going to be killed if they didn't get given this new campaign and bailout from the dairy industry. So, they are using animals' lives kind of to barter with the government to get more money from them. And you can even see in other industries in the UK as well. So, like the fish farming industry, I think it was farmed trout. The farmers, basically, they got to, market weight or market size, however they measure them. And because, the fish counters in the supermarkets are closed, they just said they're going to kill them all anyway because they don't want to have to feed them anymore. So I think, as an organisation, we think it's really important to kind of, promote that the animals do pay the ultimate price every single time. It's not always the farmers. We should be promoting these initiatives, through the government to help the farmers, but the animals always pay the prices first. And then I think the biggest thing that's been, not necessarily exposed, because obviously we knew this already, but something to really relay to the public as well, that this is a violent system and their answer is always going to end in violence. They never have a positive answer or positive outcome. So it's a violent industry, and their answers are always full of violence, killing more animals, and, individual farmers, if we suggest, they go plant-based, for example, they'll blame animals being killed on our part rather than their part. So it's definitely helped us expose even more that, it's an industry of violence. So I'll pass it back to you, Marina.
Thank you. Yeah. So I guess the same question over to Carrie. So how has the pandemic exposed pre-existing problems with the current food system? So.
Well, I won't go into bailouts too much. I think we'll come on to that later, and Ayrton and Peter have done a great job on that. I think the most direct issue that the public even seem to be picking up on now is that zoonotic diseases come from the way we treat animals. So 3 out of 4 diseases actually are transmitted animal to human. And that doesn't just come from the close proximity we have with these animals. It's directly related to how we treat them and our consumption of them. But the scariest thing for me is antibiotic resistance. So the UN have warned us, and this was just last year in a report, that there's no time to wait. That if we don't deal with this problem now, it could have a disastrous impact within a generation. We think about what the coronavirus has done. This is a relatively mild virus. It's highly contagious. But imagine if we had a highly contagious disease, antibiotic resistance, that we couldn't deal with, that had disastrous consequences more than the coronavirus. This epidemic has just shown how vulnerable we are. Even the UK government, in their O'Neill report, they acknowledge that antibiotic use in the farming sector is causing huge alarm for human health. And there's so many gaps in our knowledge when it comes to how these antibiotic resistant moves from animal to humans and the environment. We're playing with fire whenever we try to use antibiotics with animals. And our misuse of these antibiotics are causing deaths globally. For about 700,000 people die from antibiotic resistance each year. 80% of the world's antibiotics are used in the agriculture sector. It might be lower in this country, it might be 30%, but when you look at cases such as there was a farm in Northern Ireland, in Moy Park Farm last year, when they were raided, they found horrible animal rights violations, but also found illegal growth hormones, antibiotic growth hormones. Okay, there might be legislation in place, but we know these farms are using them. And when farmers, the agricultural industry tells us, yes, but antibiotics are necessary, but surely they wouldn't be necessary if we just didn't farm animals. Every time every farm animal, we are increasing the risk of a disease that is going to kill off a lot of humans. And we're talking about things like Salmonella and E. coli. But not even on diseases, what this pandemic has shown us is that our food system itself is broken, and it definitely needs transforming. This should be a wake-up call to us. We saw with COVID that we had a temporary problem with food shortages. We saw a lot of food waste, stockpiling, we couldn't get certain foods. Imagine what the climate crisis will do. We know that what it does to crops, we know that we're in danger of not being able to use agricultural lands. When we think about food sovereignty and food security in the UK, we only grow about 27% of our own fruit and vegetables. According to HSBC, we actually import about between 50 to 80% of our food if we take everything that's processed. So we know that there's a real issue with food security. And the main reason why that is to do with animal agriculture. If there's a Land Workers Alliance review, and I think it said that, yeah, if we went plant-based, we could feed 200 million people in the UK. The trouble is we are feeding that grain, that food to animals. So this pandemic has just shown us how animal agriculture is putting us into a precarious situation when it comes to our food system, when it comes to our health, and when it comes to our climate. It's implicated across the board.
Yeah, it's so true how it's all linked in together. And yeah, it just feels like a veil has almost been lifted during this pandemic. It's really just given an insight to all the broken systems and all the different ways in which, yeah, for us especially, seeing how it is all linked in to the exploitation of, yeah, animals and the planet and each other, really. Yeah, Steph, did you want to add anything to the question above? Yeah, the pre-existing problems with the current food system.
No, I think it's been really eloquently covered by everyone so far. So
yeah, it really has. It's been really great. Thank you. So the second sort of topic of discussion this evening, so we talked about sort of the fragility of supply chains in order to maintain production. There's been obviously a lot of focus on our frontline workers in hospitals and the NHS in all different parts of our society. But what problems might frontline workers within our food system be facing, like during this pandemic, and like how might we ensure justice for them in the future? So yeah, just unpacking that a little bit. Steph, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, I don't mind starting. Thank you, Marina. So as it was mentioned before, like COVID has just really unveiled the injustices across society. And we're seeing that on so many different levels. And the one we're talking about today is our food system. So our food system has been well broken before the outbreak of COVID. However, this global crisis has exposed how fragile this truly is and how inevitable it is to transform it. So we are seeing the continuation of animals being exploited and killed in our current food system, which just continues to be a major breeding ground for diseases. We don't fully know the history of like the emergence of COVID-19, but we do know that with other diseases that come from the exploitation of animals, including swine flu and bird flu, and these are coming and evolving in chicken and pig farms, which really need to end. So not only is our current system harming animals and causing risk to humans, but it's also driving us to extinction as a major cause of climate and ecological breakdown. So outbreaks of COVID-19 are occurring like right now in slaughterhouses, in processing plants as well, slaughterhouses in the UK and around the globe. Workers are constantly working in crowded conditions, predominantly are made up of migrant workers, migrating to countries seeking for a better future and being placed into these, I don't even have words to explain, but these places that are just so horrible that it just affects like the animals, but then also just people's mental health of just going in there every day and having to be exposed to that. And they just remained open throughout the whole crisis. So we're seeing people being put at risk with the spread of COVID and just the mental implications it has of being in that place. Sorry, I'm starting to lose words. Frontline workers are currently dying through COVID, and they're putting their families at risk because we're seeing the spread of the disease. Slaughterhouses are becoming hotspots. We've seen it in the UK and Ireland. We've seen it in the United States, and there's been more reports around the globe. And they're just not being supported in the industry or government, or not being supported in a really just and sustainable way, which I know we'll talk more about bailouts later on as well with that. And like many other frontline workers and members of society, they're living with uncertainty, just like how we are right now. We're living with this uncertainty, and we're just genuinely scared, you know, when it comes to our own personal lives, like how are we going to pay rent? How am I going to eat this week? When will I see my loved ones or my family again? And especially for those who are working in the front lines, who are apart from their family, they are potentially really scared about this. So it's just not enough support for ordinary citizens in the UK. Instead of using taxpayers' monies to help self-employed, help, you know, migrants, to help people in these industries, the government continues to just show us again and again that they care more about propping up these big industries and corporations, and basically the 1%, like to keep them happy, but not really put as much effort as they could be to everybody else. And we really can't go back to business as usual, as we've mentioned already before. Like COVID has unveiled all these injustices across society when we're looking at the exploitation of animals, we're looking at frontline workers in the food system, or just anywhere across society. And we really can't go back to business as usual. So even post-COVID, because this will hopefully end at some point, but unless animal farming ends and the fishing industries end, this will just continue, and this will become more common. We're going to be in lockdowns more common, and we're just going to continue putting frontliners in our food system at risk. We need to end these industries and transition to a more just and sustainable food system. And what we mean by this is that everyone is being considered and what this future would look like. So we don't exploit animals or use animals. They are being prioritized in this just and sustainable system that we'd like to create. We're not stripping our natural resources and creating a surplus of food that we're seeing with food waste, even at the farming level, and we're seeing in supermarkets. And one that prioritizes the health and the well-being and financial viability of farmers as well, and all others workers involved in this industry. So what we mean by this transition is really encompassing everyone who's affected physically, mentally, like health, financially, and also like animals, the planet, just everyone. What kind of world do we really wish to see? And we need to be growing food locally. The UK could be completely self-sufficient on a plant-based food system, and we could take most of the land and rewild it. Instead, we're stripping our natural resources and feeding it to animals that are then in confinement and exploited. And our food system is so broken and harmful that we urgently need to transform it and create a world that supports all living beings.
Thank you, Steph. Peter, would you like to take on the sort of same question. So what problems might frontline workers, so within our food system, and that's our food system is very large and worldwide now, during this pandemic, I guess, and like what can we do to ensure justice for them in the future as well? Do you want to take that away?
Yeah, sure. I think Stephanie, you did a really good job of covering it, really. But I'll just add that, I think that one thing we can do is try and expose as much as possible what is happening. These things have already been happening. There are already workers who are from marginalized groups who are in these terrible positions. I think a couple of years ago, there was news articles out about how there was a lot of Syrian refugees who ended up being pretty much forced into working in Canadian slaughterhouses. And that was just one example of where this came up into the press and into the more public awareness. But also, it's difficult to know how much is actually in the public eye. And I think with this as well, what we should consider is that whilst it's becoming more obvious to us, and it's like we're seeing it, we're also seeing it through a lens of already beforehand knowing about this. And I think going forward, one key thing is to try and get this information about how there are these marginalized groups of people who are in these positions, but also how we have reduced animals to products and to objects, how both of those things are entwined, and how, because we treat them as less than the individuals they are, that this is why this system is being allowed to continue. And so I think it's a lot to do with the awareness and getting that through into the other groups of people out there. And one thing I think is it's not just necessarily the what we'd call the mainstream who we have to focus on. It's also the other people. Because I don't know who it was, but recently I heard a quote saying that the mainstream isn't the majority, meaning that there's a lot of different groups of people who we can be spreading this information with in order to make up a majority, even if that isn't necessarily what's classed as like the mainstream. And I think that's something really important to note there, in an attempt to change these and resolve these problems.
Yeah, it's it always strikes me when you're just able to have a conversation with somebody, the ways in which you're able to connect and relate to each other, and just being able to see one another for our commonalities and what we can connect on, what brings us together, and then really really looking at what are our needs, what are our needs in society, what connects us. And I think this time of COVID and lockdown has really allowed that sense of reflection within society. We've really started to look at what is important to us, what is our time worth, what are we doing, what are these systems, why do we go to work this way? Why do we do all of these things in this way? It's a real time now for these conversations to be had and for real change, a real opportunity for change. Sorry, just a little comment. Carrie, did you want to add anything? Or Ayrton, did you want to add anything to that line? Yeah?
I think just going on the back of what Stephanie said earlier, I think it's really important to understand that we can be self-sufficient here in the UK if we do go down the plant-based farming route. And in terms of, the frontline workers that are being affected, I think, the obvious one that's already been brought up will be, the slaughterhouse workers. who, you know, they're still being forced to work. They're at, you know, huge risk. But I think as well, we need to think in the long term, you know, with the animal farmers and, you know, the people within the fishing and shellfish industries, relating to being self-sufficient. So, for example, with sheep farmers, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the UK is the biggest, you know, live exporter of sheep out of any of the EU countries. I guess the UK compared to the EU now. So yeah, you know, the majority of the sheep in the UK that we are producing, we are shipping them abroad. So obviously that brings us back to, you know, we're not exactly self-sufficient because those resources producing those sheep could have gone into producing food for ourselves, and then we wouldn't have to, you know, be importing food from all around the world if we had these farmers that are transitioning to plant-based farming. I think another key example as well, which has been exposed through the bailouts, is the shellfish industry. So 80%, well, approximately 80% of the catch that comes in from the shellfish industry is exported abroad. It's not consumed in the UK because we just, you know, UK people don't seem to have an appetite for shellfish, luckily. But yeah, a lot of that is exported to France, Italy and Spain, especially the lobsters. So again, if those people kind of, you know, if we had the government stepping in and helping those people transition into other industries, we could actually be, you know, get self-sufficient a lot faster. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's, sometimes we focus a lot on our land animal friends, and often the conversation doesn't include you know, the fishing industry and our industries that are exploitative on the sea, in the seas. For some reason, it's a conversation that doesn't tend to happen as often, and it is one of the reasons why it's sort of a part of our focus as well. And I know it's yours as Animal Justice Project. There's a lot of been you know, the slaughterhouse industry on fishing trawlers. I know it's a very similar situation with workers on trawlers being migrant workers and often not having paperwork, not being able to, you know, being undocumented, not having the option to leave the ship. And yeah, it's exploitative industry as well there on all fronts. So I guess the next sort of line of conversation we were looking at is on the topic of bailouts. So we've seen government bailouts for dairy and shellfish, as you were mentioning, or they've been requesting a bailout. So both Animal Rebellion and Animal Justice Project are opposing these bailouts and some of the policies that are coming out of sort of coronavirus. They're sort of, you know, being done behind closed doors, as it were. Why, I guess, if we could go into sort of why these subsidies are so inefficient, like what are the steps we should be taking to ensure a better future? So how could that money be better spent? And I guess, just unpacking that. Who'd like to start on this one?
I can start if you like.
Kerry, yeah.
Yeah, sure. This is actually one of my specialist subjects. I worked for DEFRA in the Rural Payments Agency, paying subsidies for a few years. They are highly inefficient. And the reason why is because they are not based on farmers' needs, and they are not based on animal wealth or the welfare of these animals. They are based on how much land you own. So you'll have cases of like James Dyson, the millionaire, the tax refugee millionaire, who doesn't pay taxes in this country, yet he bought loads of land so that he could claim farm subsidies. Farm subsidies are for landowners and big business. We were linked to the Common Agricultural Policy, and I'll come on to the new agricultural bill in a moment, but we pay out about $3 billion a year in subsidies for farmers, often for farmers not to farm, or for farmers to do the very basic things with animals, animal welfare. And to be honest, the animal agriculture industry just isn't profitable. We have to prop them up with this money. So unfortunately, I think it was 2014, they changed the laws so that we can't see how many subsidies are for each animal. So we don't know how many subsidies beef farmers have or sheep farmers have. But what we do know is that the average sheep farmer in the UK has only an income of about £33,000, but yet they claim roughly about £50,000 in subsidies. So farmers are making money not off of animal agriculture, they're making money off of us taxpayers paying for that animal agriculture, which is bad obviously for the animals. We just don't want that to happen to them. They shouldn't give their lives for it. And also for our planet. The climate cost of animal agriculture is huge. And it's not just you're thinking the small farmer who gets helped out here, it's big business. We have over 700 factory farms in the UK. And we're paying about 70 billion in subsidies each year for these factory farms. And this is going towards terrible conditions for these animals and terrible consequences for the planet. And it's just going back into the pockets of big business. So you think maybe Brexit will give us an opportunity for change. And we at Animal Rebellion were hoping that as well. But from all accounts of the new agriculture bill, it's just trying to maintain the status quo. So the bill says that we need to give farmers money for public goods, but animal agriculture is not in the public good, and it's certainly not in the good of the animals either. We could give subsidies to farmers for protein crops, like fava beans, for example, lentils, quinoa, I think that's how you say it in English. It's possible to do that, and we would be self-sufficient, but these subsidies don't go. There are hardly any subsidies for plants and crop farmers. This all goes towards animal agriculture and particularly the dairy industry. And as the Animal Justice Project have pointed out, they've recently launched a campaign. They've given them 500,000, but it could be more, just to force us, which they already do, to drink milk, to force our children to drink milk in schools and to convince us against all scientific advice that milk is a healthy drink. This is just a waste of taxpayer money, and you have to ask yourself, where exactly is the public good in that?
Yeah, it's so true, so eloquently put, Kerry. Just thinking of the action that we had this week. Peter, would you like to start with them, or Ayrton, did you start last time? Would you like to start this time?
Do you want me to go?
Yeah.
Okay, that's quite a good timing. I just noticed, just going to the quick live chat, just Sarah mentioned about Australia being the biggest live exporter of sheep. Yeah, I'm guessing that is true. When I mentioned the UK being the biggest exporter of sheep, it was within the EU, so within Europe, we're the biggest live exporter of sheep. I'm sure Australia do, export a hell of a lot more than we do. I think in terms of the bailouts and how they're being inefficient, obviously, we've already spoken quite a lot about the zoonotic diseases and how these industries are basically, they're creating these zoonotic diseases, and then they're the ones being affected by the zoonotic diseases. So it's kind of a really terrible cycle. And then we can also see the parallel as well within climate change. So, the climate crisis already mentioned as well, but animal agriculture and even plant farmers are hugely affected by climate change. And even though, the science is there to show that animal farmers are, a huge contributor to the climate crisis, we still seem to be funding these bailouts, which are propping up the industries, as Kerry has said. I think it's really important as well to point out that, going on what Kerry's just said about how these farmers basically make more from these bailouts and these subsidies rather than their actual profits from exploiting the animals. And so, in effect, we're creating a completely false supply chain. So, people are going into the supermarket and we see the price of how much it costs to buy a chicken, for example, and you can buy one for, £3 or something ridiculous, an entire chicken. And obviously this, because they're being bailed out, that's really not the true price of what these, animals are being, how much it costs to raise and kill them. So it's just so important for us to show people that it's, our taxpayers' money, where we can't choose where the money is going to fund a false supply system. I think, just the false supply system is kind of the main point I was going to say there. I think everyone else has quite covered it well already.
Yeah. It's so interesting to see how it's all linked, and a bit frustrating as well. Like when we think about like the taxpaying money the money that we invest in through our taxes and our work, to see it being, used in that way, especially during a time when, we would like to see our money, for example, be going to the NHS during this crisis, or other more sustainable industries. It's very frustrating. But again, hopefully it's maybe a time where that veil has been lifted, and we, I kind of takes me on to my next question. But does anyone have anything to add to sort of talking about subsidies and the inefficiency of them, or the steps that we could be taking within the industries, I guess?
Yeah, can I just point out as well, something again, you mentioned, Kerry, obviously you know quite a lot on this area. You mentioned about how the subsidies really aren't there for plant-based farmers. Just this morning I was talking to somebody who's up in the Scottish Highlands, and they're starting to farm hazelnuts, and there's somebody nearby that are starting to farm mushrooms. And for the hazelnut farm specifically, the person who owned the land before had, I think it was about 1,000 sheep and so many cows, and they could claim tens of £1,000s worth of subsidies every single year. And because they swapped to plant-based farming, they're not allowed to claim a single penny. So yeah, there's currently no grant money available because they choose to, farm hazelnut trees rather than farming sheep and cows. It's something that I think it's Vegan Outreach, the group called Vegan Outreach. They're based up in Scotland. I think they're trying to lobby the Scottish Parliament currently to try and change this legislation to help the plant-based farmers. It's obviously something that's really important for us to do, as well as to obviously lobby the smaller individual governments too.
Yeah, super important. I guess that kind of, just takes us into the last question that we sort of have and topic, which is sort of what can we do, I guess, as movements. Yeah, so what we're doing to help make those changes. And I guess especially during the pandemic, but also, beyond that. But I think, just like at this time of transition and of potential change, I guess, like, what is it that we can do as organizations? Obviously beyond what we're already doing. Peter, would you like to start us with that one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I guess leading on from what we were talking about with the dairy industry, they're getting that much money at the moment, and it's also at a time when they've been threatening to kill a lot of the cows and also pouring milk away. And I think partly what this shows is it highlights the extent that they're comfortable going to, or I guess like there's an argument to say that they're uncomfortable, but in terms of the wider perspective, they're fairly comfortable with killing these animals and on a large scale. And I think that's largely because they treat them as property and as less than the individuals they are. And I think that a large part of this is a large part of what we can do is make people more aware exactly what that means for the animals and also for every human as well, and try and basically raise awareness for that. I think everyone in some way, when it comes to these things, are fighting for the attention of the people who can make that change. And so I think during this time, it's a case of looking at where that attention is, looking at the who it is who is giving that attention, whether that's the individuals who can make changes in their consumer habits, or whether that's organizations, whether that's the government, and trying to get that attention focused on what we want it to be focused on the truth and on what can be done to change that. So I think that's the first thing, is we need to get people's attention. And one thing we're doing at the moment is we're doing online actions at the moment still. So we're running weekly events on a Thursday evening, UK time, and this is basically, we're kind of lobbying Boris Johnson's Facebook and Twitter accounts, and it started off as one event for the Exposed campaign promoting it, but it's turned into 11 or 12 events in total every Thursday now until the end of the Milk Your Moments campaign. So when we saw this Milk Your Moments campaign, we realized it was just, it's such a terrible campaign because it's firstly the money that is going into it. Like you said, it's like 500,000 that we know of, and then another 500,000. And this is on essentially like an ad campaign, a marketing campaign that is there to get us to do something that we should have stopped a long time ago. And so we're trying to basically disrupt that. We're trying to disrupt the impact that has, and trying to make sure that when people look at this Milk Your Moments campaign, they actually come away with more actual facts and more actual, a clearer perspective on what the situation is for the animals and also for the finances and also like you said about the antibiotic resistance. I think that it's a terrifying thing, and again I think largely it's due to we need to focus on getting the attention into the right places. Another aspect of this specific dairy campaign is the fact that they've also been promoting the Mind charity. So that they launched on Mental Health Awareness Week, and they have been making a big deal of promoting Mind in efforts to help dairy farmers specifically, or farmers specifically with their mental health. Whilst it's important to, I'm all for helping everyone with their mental health and providing the resources that everyone needs. I think what this is it's a skewed perspective again. The attention isn't in the right position, in the right place. We're promoting, they're promoting the dairy industry, one that has terrible implications on people's mental health as well as physical health. And at the same time, they're working alongside a mental health charity. And I think, again, it's this lack of perspective and something they, again, feel comfortable doing, even though, and something they probably wouldn't feel comfortable doing if they felt that the public's awareness was more focused on that. So I guess that speaks to that point. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I hadn't actually realized they had linked up with Mind Charity. That's really interesting. Steph, would you like to speak to this one? So what sort of changes we can be trying to make during the pandemic and beyond?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So one thing I just wanted to bring back is I really like personally, it's just like this situation it's a horrible situation that we're currently in, but I think it's really giving us a like historic opportunity to provoke change. It's something like globally that we're all experiencing at the same time collectively. And a lot of people are thinking and reevaluating how they do things and like, you know, where's money going? And it's really, as we've been kind of mentioning throughout, unveiling this system. So how we can make change, I think what's really important is for us to be uniting as movements with other movements and working together in solidarity, similar to like here kind of talking, hearing what Animal Justice Project is doing, like what we're doing, and just bringing more voices together and spreading that awareness of what people are doing. I also think connecting to other communities, really taking care of ourselves, connecting with others, connecting with frontliners, people that are in the food system, your neighbor, and just, bringing that sense of community and listening to perspectives. And I think making sure frontline workers in the food industry, knowing that we support them and we're giving room for their voices to be heard, to really allow for a space of openness to a transition and to have that support. But then how do we do that? And with this, it's, as Carrie mentioned at the start of who Animal Rebellion is, like we put a lot of pressure on the government as like the pillar of society. And if we continue with that sustained pressure, eventually it will crumble and change will have to happen. So with that, it's like, we need to keep mobilizing people, bringing people, taking action. And there's so many different ways that we could be doing that. So with this, what we're doing actively now, similar to like kind of like prevent future pandemics, we've had groups across Europe and in the UK going to like fast food restaurants and having like next pandemic comes from here and hazardous tape. So taking like actions like that, so people are, you know, walking by and taking a step back, oh wait, what is this? And getting them kind of thinking and educating them in that way as well. But then also like putting pressure on these companies and corporations that are part of this unjust food system that we see. Another one as well, as we've mentioned, is we had like a theatrical performance outside of DEFRA as well to highlight kind of the funding that the government is giving Big Dairy, despite the health implications on humans, the implication it has on animals and the destruction it has to the planet. Another thing too is like, if you want to just do something, spray painting, postering, stickering, anything, just get on the streets, doing something, obviously abiding by social distancing, being safe about it. But, you know, like, getting your housemates together and being like, we're going to spray paint this. We're going to get the message out there. We're going to keep putting this pressure on. That's really what we need to be doing and getting involved as a collective movement. So Animal Rebellion is like decentralized. So you don't need to ask for permission to take action. Like you could just go out right now and go do something, and that's totally fine. So you can like get a group of your friends. If you want to find people to like do actions, get on the streets with, you can go on our website to get more involved that way. But really encouraging people to just be creative, have actions that they're comfortable taking part in. And that could be in so many different ways, connecting with other movements, getting involved in other, like whether it be environmental or animal justice movements, and just really projecting what needs to happen. Yeah. I don't know if Carrie has anything else to add.
Yeah, inspiring. Yeah, I think, there's so many ways for us to be active during this time. And I think, what you said about sort of like connecting with other movements as well, like it's really interesting. Makes me think like about, like those, I guess, some of the maybe other movements and like climate movements in particular that maybe don't have that strong of a connection with the animal agriculture, the impacts of that on the climate. Like this is a really, amazing time that we can be sort of becoming active within other organizations and like bringing that conversation in. It's just sparked a few thoughts for me. Thank you for that. Did anyone want to add? Oh yeah, I just saw a comment in the chat as well from Tatiana about Refarmed, who's an organization we had on the stream of solidarity, who's helping farmers transition from dairy or livestock production to plant-based milk alternatives. And when we were talking about the Mind charity, about the mental health as well, that really sparked my thought of Refarmed, and Tatiana put it in almost as soon as I thought of them. But it is about having that support there for the mental health of everyone in this time, especially, but like, yeah, I suppose within those transitional times where it must be quite daunting. It's interesting that they would, the mind charity thing, I hadn't heard about that. So it's interesting, the link, for the support, which is obviously, it's important to support people, around mental health issues. It's just interesting that it's not, it could be done to help them transition, and it's not. It's frustrating. But anyways, moving on. I have a few questions which have popped up through the chat here. For some reason, I don't see the Facebook Live, but it says it's live on Facebook. So I don't know if anyone else has some questions that they want to bring in from there. But I've got some that have come through in the chat. And then I had another couple of questions for myself too. But so we had the first question we had was, at some stage, I'd like to talk about the importance of local action. So I don't know if somebody would like to take that one on. So I guess like taking action at a local level there. Carrie?
I can, yeah. So at Animal Rebellion, we're really focused on decentralization. We want local groups to have the autonomy to be able to go off and to create their own actions and put pressure at a local level. And that's really important, that it happens at a local and national level at the same time. We need to come at it at all fronts. And I think Ronnie's second part was to explain why the climate crisis is caused by human supremacism. This for me, I totally agree. When we started up Animal Rebellion, the idea was that we wanted also to shift the climate movement and the way that they think about animal rights. And we have come a long way. But even yesterday, I was in an agroecological talk, and even people, very well-meaning people who understood the climate crisis very well, there still wasn't the understanding that because us humans believe that we can manipulate and use nature, especially non-human animals, that's the root cause of this crisis. And we can't address that crisis until we stop exploiting animals. And this involves a systemic shift in society. When you think about oppression and what we're taught as a child, the first oppression we're taught is an animal is for us to use and to eat. And after that, as we go through life, all other forms of oppression become normalized because of that initial form. And so when you think about how we can move these barriers of oppression, these learnt oppressions of racism, sexism, homophobia, the problems that have caused the climate crisis, it does depend on dismantling all factors and dismantling the way that we treat animals and the way that we use animals, and animal liberation is the key to this. And in Animal Rebellion, we like to think of ourselves as part of the movement of movements, and we want to build a broader support. And only with a broader movement are we going to be able to dismantle these systems of oppression that have caused the misery and the torture of animals.
Yeah,
I hope that answers the question from Animal Rebellion's point of view.
Yeah. I was. Thanks for grabbing the last bit of the question. I was going to separate them out, but I'm glad
it's a really important thing, because to understand that these oppressions are linked, and to understand that the climate crisis, it's because of the way that we treat animals and nature. It's not something that we can just brush over. It is the root cause.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. Ayrton, would you like to I guess talk about the importance of from your perspective at Animal Justice Project, local action, and then I guess linking into that the climate crisis and human.
So I would say obviously we can't currently do it, but a big part of Animal Justice Project is getting people out on the streets. So every major campaign that we launch, we always have a street outreach, street stunts, some form of events going out on the streets. So we also tend to do a lot of university tours because a lot of research has shown that university age people can be very open-minded and willing to change and willing to listen. But yeah, we do a lot on the streets in general as well. So I think it's so important for us to try and travel around to as many cities as possible. So for example, just before lockdown, we kind of continued with the Foul Truth campaign against Gressingham Ducks. So we went out, we did an event here in Nottingham. We went down south to a couple of places as well. We did the same last year when we did the chicken version of the campaign. We went around various universities all around the country. So I think as a group in general, we think it's so important to do, try and spread out this information as much as possible, even though we are a national organisation. I think because obviously, we can't kind of visit everywhere. We also like to do as much online actions as possible as well. So with every campaign that we launch, we always have, actions on social media. People can share our posts. We utilise, pre-written petitions and letters quite a lot as well. So with the current Exposed campaign, if you go on our website and go onto the page, you'll see that we've pre-written a letter to George Eustice, which is the Environmental Secretary in the UK. So you can basically we've set that up like a petition. So you simply just have to enter a couple of details and you can send that off, and it literally takes 5-10 seconds for somebody to do that. And checking earlier, we've sent about 1,500 letters off to George Eustice already. And this is a relatively new campaign. So although it's so important to do local stuff, I think it's important to have access for people to do wherever they live as well, because obviously we can't kind of get out and go everywhere. But as a group in general as well, so past campaigns that we've done, such as our Lifeline campaign, we do try and rally people in their own cities to hold the events themselves, and we send out resources as well. So the lifelines, for example, they're split between speciesism and vivisection lifeline, so it's actually taking the footage directly to the members of the public. And so we've done that, Wales, Scotland, England, Northern Ireland, simply by providing the resources for people to go out and do it. And it's, obviously it's all about trying to motivate people and helping them spread the message as easy as possible. I guess that's my input.
Thank you. So the next question we had was from Mika, and it was it was a collaboration question about the Vegan Justice League. So they focus on lobbying and government subsidies and to animal agriculture. I don't know. Have we considered? Have we done that?
I think was that what I mentioned about up in Scotland? So
yeah. Okay, cool. That was touching on that one.
Yeah, I think it was off the back of that. So I think, God, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's Vegan Outreach Scotland.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's the group. But yeah, so they're currently trying to lobby the Scottish Parliament, as far as I'm aware, to help put in, available funds for these plant-based farmers, because currently they have access to absolutely zero funds at all. So if these couple of really prominent plant-based farmers up in the Highlands fail, it's simply because there was no resources to help them. I think in general we do need to lobby the government as much as possible. That's why with our online actions, we are targeting Boris Johnson and the UK government. This is something that as a group we've never really done before, because we tend to go for the the high welfare labels or the companies, but we kind of wanted to go for the top tier this time. I think it is so important that we are targeting the government, and that's why when we send our letters off as well, we have targeted it to them as well, because this is such a huge issue, and it's kind of in reality, it's only the government that can put these initiatives in place to help the farmers transition to plant-based farming. So yeah, that's why we chose lobbying this time. Similar to what Animal Rebellion are doing.
I think it's also good to note that, like, in other campaigns, depending on what the aim is, like on a more local level as well, reaching out to councils and making use of that is something that we're working on at the moment as well. And I guess it ties back into the last question asked. And I think as well, like collaboration in general with as many different organizations as possible who have the same goal is really important, which is why I really like what we're doing here today, and the series you've been doing, Animal Rebellion. And I think it's something that more larger organizations should definitely be doing with as many different groups as they can basically manage to do. That could be just kind of like weekly, whether that's online or offline, but if we're keeping it just online for a minute, whether that's kind of just, whatever they can manage to do week by week. But also when it comes to specific campaigns or specific online events or wherever it is, collaborating as much as possible with smaller groups, because you could have a lot of local small groups who, if they all take action on the same day, it can be really impactful, especially in the local area. And this might be going off in a tangent a little bit, but and it's more social media related. I think more time should be spent looking at also ways to get the message outside, like use those groups and get on the local level and get them to be able to push that message into their local area, but outside of the kind of bubble that we talk about. And there are different ways to do that, but the importance of that is because those local groups provide the context for the people around them to have more of a powerful message than potentially a group further away or more abstract as in national can do. Again, going a bit further along that line, that tangent is the use of online ads as well, being, if done well, can be an extremely useful tool to get outside of that bubble and target very specifically people who you want to be able to target, and groups and even organizations.
Yeah, love it. Oh, someone's just put in the chat, if someone could have an idea to create a worldwide safe space like a vegan cookbook, that could be great. Definitely. I think we should all collaborate on a cookbook together. It'd be awesome. So we got one last question from Lily. I think maybe if we take two sort of answers about that, and then we'll sort of, I guess, wind down, because we've only got it for we set up for another 7 minutes. And then as well, I guess, sort of any requests for resources, to put it in the chat. We can always email out from the Eventbrite registration any resources people would like, links to what Animal Justice Project are working on, their campaign and their initiatives, and as well as the Animal Rebellion, what we're up to. Obviously, we've got the Stream of Solidarity and the Alone Together program. And yeah, so we've got one last question from Lily, which is, how best can we approach farmers to transition to plant-based, considering they lose subsidies for it? So I guess one sort of like, how would we approach farmers? I know we had this sort of talk. We had Geraldine Stark from Refarmed on. Kerry, do you want to start with this one?
Are you sure Steph doesn't have anything to say?
Oh, is Steph ready to go on that one?
I can say a bit, but then I'm going to pass it to Carrie because she'll know more of the farmer relationship stuff. I just want to highlight the importance, as we've kind of discussed throughout the panel today, of the support not being given to plant-based farmers, and in the end it comes from government. And this is why we're talking to government. And I'm really excited that Animal Justice Project's doing the same and like lobbying the government, because the more pressure we put on that, the more likely we're going to be able to support these farmers. And this is why as Animal Rebellion, like we really focus on this transition, because we know it is going to be a transition, unfortunately, for animals, but it's like, we need to continue this pressure, and we want to ensure that the farmers, you know, they have this financial viability moving to a more just and sustainable kind of way of working and farming. And again, just wanted to reiterate, and Carrie will go into more of like how we approach farmers and kind of things like that. But it's just so important that we're taking action, we're taking direct action, we're doing things, because that's what's going to ultimately get the change, is the government just being like, if we keep going and we can mobilize as many people as possible, they will have to listen. And in the end, that will help animals and that will help the farmers as well. I'll pass it to Carrie.
Okay, thanks. This is a very, very interesting question, a very good question. You'd think farmers would be all for subsidies because they benefit from them. In fact, they're not. They don't take any pride in the fact that they are almost like given benefits and not able to just farm. When you think about farmers, the way that they see themselves, the psychology behind the fact that they take pride in being able to feed the nation, that's what we need to tap into. You'll find we actually have things in common with farmers, and that's the way that we're going to see a way forward, is to find out what commonalities we have and how we can help them transition. And just on that point, hopefully I'll be embarking on a research project very soon to go around the country and interview livestock farmers and find out what obstacles there are for them making the transition, and how we can actually communicate as animal justice advocates with farmers to help them on that way. So it's a good question. The answers aren't there at the moment, but there are a lot of people working on it, including Geraldine at Refarmed. You've got the Rancher Advocacy Program in the United States, and Sarah Heiligtag in Luxembourg. There are some good people on it, and the Vegan Society as well. So in the future, hopefully, we'll be able to make alliances with farmers, and as vegans, as animal justice advocates, help them to transition to a more just and sustainable food system.
That's great. Thank you, Carrie. Peter or Ayrton, would you like to touch on that one, and then we'll just have a quick checkout?
Yeah, I can just input something.
Yeah, great.
As an organisation, Animal Justice Project, we're a small group, so we don't necessarily have the resources to be doing individual farmer outreach. But something that we thought was really important for our New Exposed campaign was to split it in half. So a lot of animal rights campaigns can be quite negatively worded, especially, our own as well, especially if they include undercover investigations. We're exposing, animal abuse, really, really horrific findings. So it can be a very negative space, really. So for this campaign, we wanted to split it in two. So we've got, we're asking the government to, stop these animal agricultural bailouts, stop promoting animal abuse, etc. But then we wanted to do the polar opposite as well, and urge the government to support plant-based farmers. So that will link into, those Scottish farmers that I've already mentioned that have no access to subsidies whatsoever. And then we wanted to, our letter overall is to urge the government to create these initiatives, such as the Refarmed initiative in the US. So for the government to actually implement their own initiatives rather than supporting ones that are already in place, you want them to put their own in place, because then they could be more broadly put out at a national level. And then moving on from that, as a group, we want to show people that we're reaching out to the government for positive change. But one of the next stages that we're going to be doing as part of the campaign, obviously I can't say too much, but we're going to show some really positive examples of, how that's been succeeded in the past, and how these farmers, they can change if they are given the support. So hopefully that will get the public more behind the campaign as well, rather than seeing us as kind of, the negative side, always saying, don't do this and stop this. We really want to have the positive side as well, because we do want, the sustainable plant-based future.
Thank you. What a great note to end on. Peter, did you want to add something?
I was just going to add a little bit. I was just going to say,
go.
It's kind of reiterating what people were saying, really. But I wanted to wanted to say that I think it is, as Gary was saying, it's about finding those common strands between us all, and that I think can be a very difficult thing as well, especially when we're dealing with some really just horrendous things, and we're talking about horrendous things, and having that perspective whilst also trying to work out what's the way that we can change that in the quickest way. It's tricky, and it's almost a tightrope, but I think going to the people who have already made that change is really important, because they can not only help inform us about how to approach these topics, but also they can be an example of that hope of what can be done, and hope for us, but also potentially hope for some of the farmers out there who are at a point where they're almost ready to change, almost but not quite ready. And I'm sure there must be those people, because we've got people now who have that has happened to, and they've done that. So it's a difficult position I think we're in. But yeah, I think showing that way forward is vital.
Yeah, absolutely. Really great to hear that perspective as well. Well, I think we've run over now by 1 minute, but we've not been kicked out, so I'm assuming there's nothing lined up for 8:30. I just wanted to express my gratitude for all of you for being in the space today. It's been really great. Tech problems I don't understand. It says on my Zoom live now on Facebook, but I'm getting messages saying it's not. So I'm really sorry for the tech problems. We will get it up on YouTube as soon as possible, and we'll share it over to the Animal Justice Project as well. So we've all got the video and talk and panel to share with everybody. We'll send out follow-up emails to everyone who followed the Eventbrite with the project information, how to get more involved, and how to get involved with animal justice and climate justice, and how we can really all come together and bring about positive change. And thank you so much, guys, for coming. Want to say any last words, and then take off?
I'd just quickly like to say thank you to you guys for inviting us to come along. As we've said, we, as a group, we think it's really important as well to collaborate with other like-minded groups, and to show, the community as a whole that, it's so important that we do collaborate with these things, because we're all working for the same goal at the end of the day. Same goal under different organisation names, but we're all in, we're all on the same planet, so we're all going to end up at the same place. So, thank you for inviting us along.
Carrie, do you want to say a few words? Check out.
Just thank you, Animal Justice Project, as well. We share the same sentiments. We want to build a broad movement together, and together we're stronger. Like we said at the beginning, 3.5%. We can do it. We already have the people there. We just all need to unite. So this is a wonderful example, and thank you for asking me to be part of the panel. Marina?
I'll do a quick checkout. It's just really grateful for this space, and just really encouraged and just inspired by everyone here, like I am on a daily basis with the people I'm surround myself with. It's amazing. I'm going to stop there because I'm going to get emotional, I think. Steph?
Yeah, I can go next. Yeah, just thank you again, Animal Justice Project. Like, I really enjoyed discussing a lot of these topics, and it was really cool to see that, yeah, like, again, as you've mentioned, like, we're all in this together, and it's just interesting to see how like different organizations play a part of this like ecology of change, and like how we all do our bit in it. And it's really cool how there's things that overlap, and like even like our strategies that we're trying to accomplish, and it's really it makes me excited, and I'm sure a lot of others. So yeah, I'm just really grateful, so thank you for that. Yeah, I'll pass it to Peter.
Yeah, again, it's the same kind of sentiment really. It's just thank you, Animal Rebellion, and also everyone else who's here listening and watching. Yeah, it's we kind of all know that there's lots of different groups doing things, but then kind of collaborating like this, the other benefit is it's more tangible because we get to discuss it more, and it's really interesting, and yeah, it feels more connecting. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing how this all progresses and how we can all connect more and take more collaborative action, and yeah, get that attention focused on the things that matter, and also keep reevaluating our own perspectives and helping others do the same, so that it can really be an inclusive and collaborative movement for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Going to end the meeting now and figure out why Facebook Live didn't work and send out resources and everything to everyone, and the recording over to you guys too. So thank you again, and good night, everyone. See you soon.
Thank you, Marina.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone who came.